Hi there! Welcome to Cook Local, Eat Local, the podcast where you can find inspiration, tips, and recipes for enjoying more local food and drink. I am David Crowley, your host. Today we have a solo episode where I will be talking about 8 benefits for joining a CSA. So I need to start by explaining what a CSA is. I know if you tuned in, you might already know the term, but just in case, CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And basically what this entails is you decide that early in the growing season, you are going to make some kind of investment or payment toward a local farm. And in return, you are going to get a steady supply of fresh vegetables and potentially other produce from that farm throughout the summer or growing season. As we'll talk through this, you'll see there are a lot of variations on this theme, but the basic idea is you're putting out some money up front, helping the farmer get the cash that they need to go ahead and plant those seeds and grow some great vegetables. So that's the basic idea of community supported agriculture, or CSA. And typically what happens is you are on a schedule where once a week or sometimes every other week, you get to go and to a pickup location, or in some cases directly to the farm, and get a box or bundle of vegetables. And so that's the basic concept. And I have been doing them off and on for many years. And actually, lately, the last several years, I've been working with or going with a local farm called Warner Farm. And I actually interviewed someone from that farm for the podcast last year. So I'll link to that in the show notes. So that's the basic concept that I've shared with you. And now I want to go over 8 benefits for joining a CSA and why you might want to consider doing this if you haven't before. So first of all, number 1 is you are supporting a local farm when you join a CSA. And you're doing that, not just saying, hey, I like like to eat local, I love local farms, but you are giving them a tangible benefit. You are giving them cash that helps them invest in the season's crop. And it also helps the farm have a better idea of how many people want to buy the vegetables that I produce. So it reduces the risk a little bit for the farmers, knowing that they have X number of people signing up for their CSA farm share. So it's a real tangible way to show your support for a particular local farm. So that's number 1. Number 2 is it's just a great way to get a steady supply of local vegetables. There's certainly other ways to do it. You can go to farmers market, which is great, or look for local produce at the grocery store. But when you are in a CSA, you have basically committed, and you can count on that regular supply of local vegetables coming to you on a regular basis. Third, and it ties in with that a little bit, is when you join a CSA and you are getting local produce from a farm every week or every other week, perhaps, you are definitely going to be eating seasonally, because what they're going to be giving you in a CSA farm share is what they just picked. In fact, usually when I go and pick up my farm share on a Thursday afternoon, it's usually been picked that morning. So you are going to be really in tune with what is in season when you're doing a CSA. I love eating asparagus in early spring, and that will be in the early shares we get. And then, in the summer, you really lean into tomatoes and corn and other things like that. They're abundant in the heat of summer. And then in the fall, as the weather starts getting cool, you're going to get those squashes rolling in. And you're really going to be in tune with what is growing right now in local farms when you're doing a CSA. And I really enjoy that. It gets you more in the rhythm of nature a little bit. I know for me, I have a day job in front of, spend a lot of time in front of a computer. I'm not necessarily outside a lot other than my morning walk. So not super in tune with seasonality as much as I'd like, but eating seasonal food is a great way to plug into the rhythm of nature in its seasons. Number 4, When you do a CSA, you really put veggies at the center of your meal planning. And that flips the script a little bit for those of us that do eat some meat and fish for our proteins. I when I'm planning the meals outside of CSA season, I realistically, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what is the protein? Is it going to be steak? Is it going to be fish? Is it going to be chicken? But when you get a big bundle of local vegetables, that's really where you got to start, because you want to utilize the vegetables you do get from a CSA. So it really puts the vegetables at the center. So when I pick up the CSA, I look through and see what I have. And first of all, I'm thinking about, okay, what of these veggies, do I need to use right away that, to get them at their peak freshness, which might last, the better part of the week. And then I'm sequencing my meals around using those vegetables. So it's really, if you want to be more plant-centered in your eating, joining a CSA is a great way to do that. And my number 5 reason to consider joining a CSA is you really expand the kind of vegetables you eat. For me, that includes discovering new veggies. One of the new finds, I think it was just last year I had for the first time, was watermelon radishes. I'll have to put a picture of one of those in the show notes, because if you haven't tried it, you're probably thinking, what is that? Is it a watermelon or a radish? It's definitely a radish, but it's got that bright, vibrant red color that you get in a watermelon on the inside. It's really cool looking, and it's tasty, both raw and roasted. So that's an example of something new I've discovered through doing a CSA. And I also get stuff in my CSA that I wouldn't typically buy as regularly at the store, just because it's okay, but maybe not my favorite. So two examples: beets and eggplant. Especially before doing a CSA, I would actually never buy either of those. But I actually, through doing a CSA, found that I actually like both of those vegetables quite well, in fact, and they're not, and I get pretty pleased to see beets in my farm share now, because I've found some great ways to prepare it. A delicious roasted beet dip is the first thing that comes to mind. And I actually found last summer a way to make roasted beet pesto, which is a great way to use the beets as they start looking a little tired at the back of your veggie drawer. So, by the way, any of the recipes I reference here as I'm chatting, I will be sure to link to them in the show notes at cooklocaleatlocal.com. We are now on to number 6 reason why you should consider joining a CSA. Number 6 is it's a great way to learn new ways to prepare vegetables, because you wind up getting some large quantities of veggies that really force you to find new ways to cook them. And I know sometimes zucchini can be the bane of the folks that have a garden or that do a CSA, because you get a lot of zucchini all at once for a few weeks in the summer, and sometimes you don't know what to do with it. Well, I found a delicious recipe for zucchini butter pasta. That the zucchini gets shredded up and cooked down with some butter and basil. Oh man, it is so good. And I wouldn't have come up with that or found that recipe. That actually is not a cooking chat creation, but I wouldn't have found that recipe and come to love it if I weren't really pushed to figure out, okay, I need to find something new to do with the zucchini. So another example would be at the store. When I buy carrots, I usually just get the ones that already have the tops removed. But in the CSA, you often get the carrots with the tops. So needed to figure out something to do with them. And the result was a delicious recipe for carrot top chimichurri. So now I'm loving it. If I see those carrot tops, I'm going to put them to good use. Number 7 reason to consider joining a CSA is potential cost savings. I don't put this at the top of the list, because part of the value of a CSA is in helping small local farms get the funds they need to plant their crop with confidence. So it's not like you're really trying to scrimp and save that's not necessarily the first reason to join a CSA. But that said, you are locking in getting those vegetables at a certain price sometime around now. That I'm recording this in late March, and I actually need to sign up for the CSA for this season, because we know we're in a time when there's a lot of inflation, and so you're getting a fixed price for those vegetables throughout the season. So if you see, you know, prices continue to rise for vegetables at the grocery store, you can feel good about knowing, hey, you got a good price before inflation took hold in the early part of the growing season. So I do want to, that is kind of an interesting idea, is how, eating locally might actually be a smart decision just from an economic perspective for yourself. So that is something I want to dig into a little more in a later episode, but I did at least want to put that on my list of 8 reasons to consider a CSA today. And so, number 8, why should you join a CSA? My reason number 8 is, when you join a CSA, you are really supporting the local food system. And I started by talking about you are supporting one specific local farm when you join a CSA. But really, joining a CSA, you are casting a vote for the importance of the local food system. And certainly over the last several years, between the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, both served as a reminder of the fragility of our local food system. There have been a lot of times we haven't been able to get certain vegetables. I remember early in 2020 going in and seeing, no peas, or you could only get one bag of peas if it was there, because, there's a lot of scarcity because we were so dependent on those global food chains when you're shopping at the grocery store. So I really leaned into the local food system over the last few years. I've always been interested in eating local, but I've really found it is a time to lean into local food. So in addition to doing local CSA, I, in 2020, signed up for a program called Family Dinner, which is a great local food delivery program, which has vegetables as well as meat and other produce and other items from local makers, and also Walden local meat. So I still do get some food at the grocery store, but I am really pleased that over the last few years, I am getting a much greater portion of our food for our family is now coming from local sources. And if that's something you would like to do, joining a CSA is definitely a great way to support that local food system. Although I still get some food at the grocery store, I like having a greater portion of our food now coming from local sources. In addition to the stability that provides getting local food through a CSA, it's also a great way to cut down on the miles your food needs to travel to get to you. Our CSA veggies come to us through a fairly short drive from a local farm here in Massachusetts, whereas most of the produce in the grocery store is going to come via a cross-country or maybe even an intercontinental plane trip, and all that means for our environment. So supporting the local food system through joining a CSA is great in terms of doing what you can in your family and your household to support sustainability and fight against climate change. By the way, there's a great episode that we had with Marley, who is really passionate about those issues around local food and sustainability, that I will be sure to link to in the show notes. So I have now covered 8 solid logical reasons to consider joining a CSA farm share this year. But let me wrap with a few intangible benefits. If you're a foodie like me that likes to cook, it's just plain fun to pick up a box or bag of fresh local veggies every week, full of potentially interesting ways to prepare them. It's like, if you're a foodie, especially a healthy foodie like me, I'd have to say, it might even be better than Christmas every week, getting that supply of fresh local veggies. And that fresh local food, it simply tastes great. The freshness of local produce comes through on the plate. And as you eat it, in addition to that great taste, it probably tastes even better because you've got some of those values I've talked about in my 8 points sitting there in the back of your mind, which makes that food taste even better. So I would definitely encourage you, if you haven't tried a CSA before, maybe did a while ago, give it a go this year and follow along with our Cook Local, Eat Local episodes, because we will be sharing what's coming in our farm share and what we're making with it. So if you're worried about getting stuck with what you should make, with vegetables rolling in from your local farm, we can help you out. That's what we're all about here at Cook Local. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cook Local, Eat Local. To get the show notes with links for recipes and resources we covered today, go to cooklocaleatlocal.com to get the podcast landing page. And please be sure to subscribe to Cook Local, Eat Local wherever you get your podcasts. Make it a great day with some tasty local food on your plate.